Hi everybody, back again, and this time we've got the video that all 6 of you have been waiting for me to announce. In today's video we're going to look at my trading bot. I'm going to walk through the code, exactly where the code goes, what it's going to be doing, and talk through some of the ideas and the approach that I took and why I did what I did. So let's dive straight in. Okay, so let's just get straight into it then. What we've got here is my initial setup, and the way I've decided to approach this is by making a number of classes. Each class will have its own little task and its own responsibility. So you can see here from where the comments start, those are my classes, those are my helper classes that I'm going to reference every minute. So to get started, I wanted to make sure that I could track things in a database, because I decided if I was to run this without keeping my own log, and I was wholly dependent on logs from somewhere else, that may not give me all the information I need in order to make decisions on whether things are working the way they're supposed to work or not. So we've got myself a trading bot context, which just talks to own hosted SQL Server, and you can see the models here which I've created, which get utilized by my helper classes I mentioned a second ago. So the very first thing that happens is we write a console write line. First initialized class is what I've called the cash manager. Second, we've got the top movers. After that, the stock agent, and finally the owned stock agent. So the job of the cash manager, I decided, was this is where I can reference to try and find out exactly how much money we've got at any given time. So this is going to get used to decide what the available funds are to be distributed across those 5 stocks that we're going to invest in. And I've wrote a couple of methods such as check status. That basically just means that if I'm running this for the first time and I don't have any cash, we just generate ourselves $1,000 and we just put the comment of initial load. You can see that we print that out as well. Available balance becomes the total sum of the cash transactions, which will just be $1,000. And the only other available method that we reference is the available balance. And as you can see there, I reference in my database the cash transactions and we sum up the value. So that value field will consist of both positive and negative entries. So you know that if you have $1,000 in a cell, in Excel for example, and then move down and you put -50, if you do a sum of that, you know you're going to get 950. And likewise, if in the cell below you add 100, and you sum that again, you'll have 1050. So that's what's going to happen. I'm just going to keep injecting audit style entries so that I can call a sum at any point and go and do that. So moving on, we've got the top movers. So the top movers helper class is where I have my URL to hit the Yahoo endpoint that we talked about in the previous video, and basically use that endpoint to then go and hit the page, bring back the raw HTML, and as I described in the previous video, I then go and split that out to go and get the actual relevant bit in the middle. So if you imagine a whole web page, inside the middle of that web page is the only bit of information that I'm interested in. So I need to chop off the start, chop off the end, and what I'm left in the middle is the bit that I'm actually interested in. And that's what we're doing here. So you can see here, we use the native web client, and then I populate the entire HTML return value into that string as JSON value. So then what I do is I split that into an array. Now what that'll do is it will give me an array which has then got 2 parts to it. The first half is the first half of Gumph that I don't care about, and the second half is the bit that I'm interested in with the rest of the remainder of Gumph that I don't care as well. And that's where the second line comes in, which does the same operation again, but asks it to simply split on this closing square bracket. Now that is, as you can tell, is going to be an array closure, and I know that that's the bit that we're interested in. So I split on that, take the first half of it, which is the bit we want, and then I append back onto it again, closing square bracket that I just removed. From there, what I'm able to do is populate my actual list that I'm interested in, call it results, or at least I intended to call it results, and then we use this JSON convert class, which will deserialize it. So deserialization is basically taking what is a serialized object into string and then taking it into a full fat object again. And I'm turning mine into a generic list of a class called top mover root object. Top mover root object is literally a definition of what that information looks like based on how Yahoo have defined it. It's not my definition, it's Yahoo's definition. The result is then, I then have this object available to me, results, which is a list of top movers, and I can take from there then the movers that I'm interested in is going to be a new list, and I'm going to take and add to it the top 5 entries from Yahoo, because obviously in the Yahoo entry there's going to be more than 5. I then just log it. We've log a message, top 5 movers discovered, because it's got to this point without blowing up. We know we've got the 5 movers, and then we've got a simple for loop. We're going to iterate over those 5 items, and we're just going to print out onto the console what those movers are. This, for those people unfamiliar with string.format, is you take a string and you can then escape the string with a opening and closing curly brace, and inside that string you can just basically put an index of the following parameters that you include. So there's my string. You can see there I'm saying enter the first parameter at index 0, the second item at index 1, the third item at index 2. Now, this is quite nice because what you can actually do, if I wanted to print that out twice, I can then go and append that again and just go like that. And I don't have to re-reference it or call this number 3. It'll just pick it back up again the way you want it to. And as you can see there, I'm then just going to print out. So I is obviously our index that's going to be tracking it from the for loop, referencing the movers array, and taking the symbol, which is just going to be the symbol of the stock. So Apple would be AAPL, for example. The movers, the regular market change percentage, and then I'll run a method that just runs commit to DB. So all that's going to do, rather than just blanketly commit to the database, I go and check if the last entry that I entered into the database matches what we just did. And it's really just a case of making sure I don't overpopulate the database with information that doesn't necessarily be there to be there. And that's what this does. It effectively says, go and get the last entry. And if the last entry is not null, and the last entry symbol 1 matches the symbol in the first part of the array, and rinse repeat for 2, 3, 4 and 5, I know it's the same. So you can see there, not committed to the database, it's the same as before. Otherwise, there has been a change, in which case we just take our top 5 stocks class, create a new item, add that to the database here, context.add, new top 5 movers stock, context save changes, just to commit it to the database, and then just add a little message to our console that says new moves after the database. And that's what that does. Okay, moving on. So next we got to our stock agent. So the stock agent really is just my helper method to go and dive into the database and pull back information that we know about a stock, or pull information from the web and then commit that to our database again. So it has 2 approaches. Get what we already know, or go and get new information and commit it to what we know. A couple of methods are available in here. So we've got get from API, get latest price, purchase max stock, purchase new movers, purchase stock with different parameters going in, sell the old stocks, sell old stocks, stock agent. Yeah, there's quite a bit involved in this particular class. Rather than loop through this class, I think what we'll do is we will come back to this when you see them being used. I think if I just run through this, it might be a bit overwhelming. Finally, the last helper method is the own stock agent. So if we go into the own stock agent, this basically is the purpose, analyzing all of our stock transactions and creating entries in a nice referenceable table that is a state at the given time it's been built. So what that means is, if I was to not call this class and keep trading, then this piece of paper, if you like, if you think a bit like that, is going to be out of date. But I can call a method inside here to refresh that at any time. And that's what this does. So this class here, this method, called build portfolio from transactions. So what we want to do is we go into our database, the own stock table, remove everything, commit it to the database so that we don't have any stocks. And then for every transaction that we currently have, we'll check if we already have a reference to it. And if we don't, we create it. And if we do, we just increase it by the difference. Save the changes as we go along in case we see all these transactions for all these different stocks. If it comes out to 0, I don't need to know I've got 0. So we just delete the 0 on stocks so that we don't have anything in the database. Okay, and that summarizes my helper methods. Let's crack on and get straight into the actual functionality. First thing we're going to do is make sure we've got a reference to all of our live current stocks. And then we will dive straight in and say, sell anything that's no longer relevant. So we run our sell old stocks method method. It goes and pulls back our top 5 movers and then goes and checks if anything that's in our portfolio that's no longer in the stocks, we run a sell stock method on that stock itself. So the sell stock method fires as follows. We record a stock transaction class symbol itself, its quantities multiplied by -1, so I know that it's a sell rather than a gain. My value is the stock.value, total value is obviously the quantity times stock.value, and then I put a comment as sold as part of the old stocks. Commit that to the database and then do another entry to the database which will record the cash transaction. So the stock transaction and the cash transactions are completely separate. Do that so that I don't have to look at counting of stock prices and stock quantities when I just want to know how much available balance I've got when it comes to checking what we can spend. So there we go, that just runs through cash transaction, total value, the comment sale, that goes through. Add it to the database, save database changes, log it to the console. Next up is we go and purchase any new movers. The parameter itself is how much money have we got to spend. So that runs from our cash manager. So let's have a look at that method. This method runs in and we've already told it how much we've got. So on a clean run, that'd be $1,000. So we say 20% of the balance because we want to divide it by 5. So we can split that equal amount across the 5 stocks. So we just go available balance equals itself divided by 5. Go and get the latest movers from the database and a couple of comments. Purchase as many shares as we can per mover by the available balance and get the current price for each stock, record it, buy one and log everything. So we know exactly where we're going to go wrong. We can see it. 5 of these lines, var symbol 1 through var 5, and that's running the exact same method and just basically hitting our API to go and find the latest price for that given symbol. So let's have a quick look at one of these. You can see here we're using the Alpha Vantage API and there's the Alpha Vantage data TSD. This is the way the data comes back. So we've just got a timestamp, an open, a high, a low and a close. And all we're going to do is get the latest one of those for each given symbol. So we get a list of the monthly prices and we run another method, get from API. So this is the bit that actually goes and pulls for the information from Alpha Vantage. So what we do is we prepare a placeholder object to receive the information first, and I've wrapped this up in a try catch. Now the reason why I did this is because if we try to make too many calls in a given minute, the whole thing blows up because that's a restriction by Alpha Vantage because I'm cheap and I'm not paying for an account. I'm running on their free account. So this is just a bit of a hacky method in order to not have to keep a track of how many I've done in that 1 minute. I'd rather just to try it, and if they tell me no, then I'll wait a minute. So you can see here, I go and grab populate into monthly prices, string.format. This is the URI that we hit, which is their API URI, and we're going to go in there and we're going to push in time series daily is the function. The symbol is the reference that we're going to pass in. That's the bit that's going to change, and it's just got an API key. And this is the bit that I'm adding extra, which is the data type CSV, because the information in CSV format is easier for me to pass based on what the problem I discussed in the last video. To get from string URI from CSV, so we go and do that, get that information back down as a CSV, pass that, similar to the JSON deserialized string method, into this type of object. And multi-prices becomes the content from this URL. So this will trigger if we've done too many requests, in which case I will write to the console, kaboom, needs to wait 60 seconds, tell the whole thing to go to sleep for 60 seconds. This is 60 seconds times 1000 milliseconds because the sleep method takes a value of milliseconds, not seconds. And then we just log again, we're retrying, and you can see here we're actually just running the self, so this is consuming itself. Start this whole thing all over again up here, and it's going to return back to itself and then return back the monthly prices. Okay, so at this point we've then got a list of the monthly prices for this particular symbol. And all we want to do is create a new type of stock price, the symbol which we've just asked for, the value in the very first entry, the top entry of the CSV, so the top entry of the generic list that we created, the official timestamp, which is taken from their data rather than what time I think it is. Go and get the last entry that we had and just check if it's the same. If it is the same, do not log. Otherwise, let's add it to our database, and I'm also going to pass it back to myself so I've got access to it if I need it. And that takes place 5 times over to populate the latest prices for each of those 5. Now that method will get used again in the future. I'm not going to go over it again. Next bulk thing that happens 5 times over again, I wonder why. Purchase max stock. So inside here, we're going to say, this is my available balance, and this is the symbol that we're interested in. So purchase max stock goes through, and this is because it's simulated. There's no API calls here, unless you're just going to create a reference to the max that I can purchase, which is based on the amount that I've got to spend. And I'm going to divide that by the value, the stock value. So again, if the available balance was 200 and the stock value was 100, then I know that I can only buy 2. So it's very possible that we can't buy any because the stock price is going to be greater than our available balance that we've got to buy in this stock, in which case this is just wrapped up in an if statement to make sure that we can buy at least 1. And if we can, we run the purchase stock method. So we're going to pass in the quantity we're going to buy, the stock price item, the object itself, and I've just got a nullable override parameter here in case I want to add any custom comments. So all we're going to do, create a new stock transaction, populate it with the contents that's relevant to this particular stock, add it to the database, and just like we've seen with the selling of the stock, we're going to create a cash transaction value as well that goes through and saves it all to the database. We've run through all this and we've run one final save changes. The idea there is we're just holding back on the database writes, that we're just doing lots of different little writes. We just can let them all collate up in our database context and commit them all in one single transaction. So upon finishing buying the new movers, we then just need to repopulate our portfolio, which we've already gone over. I'm not going to do that again. And I'm just going to tell myself the new movers purchase complete, and we've got a remaining balance. So again, we're running my cash manager. You can see where these methods are going to come in handy now, can't we? The available balance. So if we had $1,000 and we've just spent 900, that would report the available balance is now 100. Rinse and repeat every 1 minute. So originally I tried to have a rather overcomplicated, overcomplex, over-engineered, whatever you want to call it, check to see if we were inside the time of the NYC trading hours. Instead, I just thought, do you know what? Let's leave it true. We'll always loop, and I know that we cannot buy or sell a stock from the stock market if it's not open. So we'll let them do the check rather than us. So we go to sleep for 60 seconds. We're going to console write line, an empty line. I'm going to just write down the fact that we are going to sleep, and I'm also telling myself what time it is, so that when I look at the console, if it says it went to sleep a given time and it's been longer than plus 1 minute, I know it's crashed. As simple as that. We go to sleep, 60 seconds, we wake up, let's tell myself I'm waking up, and then we do the fetch movers. So fetch movers, we've already seen, that goes and checks to see if there's any change in the top 5 movers. Sell any leftover stocks. The same thing we did when we very first booted the bot. Rebuild our portfolio prior to doing it, just in case it's out of sync and we try to sell stocks we don't have. That's what that's preventing. And then we're going to purchase new movers. So these really is the same thing we started off with doing. We've just then pushed it into a loop. Really, we could have put the loop at the start and let it run through. Upon completing all this, we're just going to write a little message to ourselves and say new movers purchase complete, and the remaining balance is this. And breathe. So hopefully that wasn't too quick. I'm trying to be as detailed as I possibly can without taking up a 45-minute to an hour-long video, which no doubt it could have been if it had gone through in absolute detail. So what's next? Well, there's been no secret. That's simulated trading, as you can see there. So I'm running on the principle that I have money, imaginary money. Mathematically, I can buy so many stocks of a given type at a certain price, and I'm going to record all those. I'm going to sell them. I'm going to record the price that I sell them at, and I can do a comparison at the end to see how much money I'm left over with. I'm either going to be up or I'm going to be down. Rarely, but I might even balance out. But it isn't real. So there are a couple of factors which I'm aware of, which could influence any discrepancies, such as any transaction fees, or even just delays in the actual committing. So as you can see, I'm actually assuming that at the given time that I've checked that price, it's not changed even by a millisecond, which, as we know in the stock market, that can happen, which is why there's a lot of investment in tech to make things as fast as possible to get that price when they decide to pull the trigger. So the next plan is I've actually got this application further developed than what you've seen today. It's actually plugged into the Alpaca API. Alpaca API is a stock trading API only. There's no front end to sort of use apart from a nice little dashboard to summarize your moves and your API calls. And as it stands at the moment, we're running against that, and we're running against what's called a paper account. So the paper account is a pretend money again, but it's actually running against the real market. So I'm subjected to the real price fluctuations. I'm subjected to the real delays in my calls and the actual timing between when I say I want to sell it at a certain price and what the actual price is when it actually hits the API and actually commits and fulfills itself. Yeah, we're letting that run for a couple of days to collect some data, and I'll put another video together, so stay tuned for that one. Otherwise, I hope this was informative enough. If you'd like to see anything in particular even more, I'm aware that I've not got any background details about how programming works, but hopefully that's a story that you don't need to hear. Hope that was of benefit and you enjoyed the video as much as I did making this app. I'm looking forward to seeing where this progresses to next time. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens with the Alpaca API. A little bit of an inside scoop. It isn't as wonderful as this one, let's put it that way, but we'll see what happens. So if you enjoyed this video, please do let me know, hit the like button. I would very much appreciate if you subscribe to the channel and you share with anyone else that you think may have an interest in this type of thing. If you'd like to see anything in particular that isn't going to be coming up with the Alpaca API that I've already mentioned, please do let me know and I'll see what I can do. Otherwise, look after yourself, stay safe, thank you very much. Until next time, bye bye.